I never really could figure out the T88. It's almost like a question nobody really asked, but somebody said, well, what if, hold my beer, let's see what happens. So the idea is you take your Commoner Garden M18 and you replace the gun with a 105. And obviously you got to do some other configuration. The M18 is a very, very good tank destroyer. It's very fast, very hard hitting. But what will this do that was not already being done by the M7 Howitzer motor carriage? You have a 105mm gun that is now very, very fast and has a 360-degree arc of traverse. Okay, I get it. It is better than the M7, but is it sufficiently better that it's actually worth the money? Well, the only other possibility I can think of that would maybe have been a requirement was that for amphibious assaults. And so there was testing done with the 76mm M18 firing whilst afloat. And it turned out that yes, you could do it if you fit it with a stabilizer. So the stabilizer was built to, I think it was about 250 kits all in all, but they were only issued with the swimming kit for floating pontoons on the front and back. So they never really saw service. But if you are firing whilst on an amphibious assault, the chances are, even with the stabilizer, you're not shooting at point targets, you're shooting at area targets. And the 76 isn't really the best suited gun for that. The 105 is much better. And of course the advantage of putting it onto the M18 as opposed to anything else is that the M18 is a light vehicle. It's easier to get it to float in the first place. So in theory, you could put this 105 with the stabilizer, because we know the stabilizer works, and use that as a floating assault gun. Now, I have not seen anything in the documentation one way or the other, but I put it out there as a possibility. Now, I'm going to cut to the inset shot so you can see what they've actually done to it. You can see they have taken your standard M18 turret and they've reconfigured it. Obviously, they replaced the 76 with a 105. The gunner is now located on the right-hand side. So on the M18, where you would ordinarily find the ready rack of 76mm shells, well, now you find the gunner with his power controls. Of course, power controls are kind of necessary if you're going to, especially if you're going to fit a stabilizer to the system. On the left-hand side, you're going to see your ready rack of about 12 rounds. There's additional stowage in the sponsons itself. And whilst it looks like you got a fair bit of room, well, don't forget these are rounds that you got to do a lot of manhandling and maybe pull the projectile off, remove any bag charges that you won't be using in a fire mission, reinsert the projectile, fuse it, and off you go. So I suspect it was still quite busy inside this turret, even though it may look rather empty. And that was it. They put it off to trials and it passed trials. But you'll note that the Army didn't actually buy any. I guess they figured that it really wasn't worth the expense, and eventually the M37, which I have a very old inside hatch on, but it's still valid, it's still up there, came into service as the replacement 105mm, slightly speedier version than the M7, based off of the M24 chassis. Two of the T88s were built, and then there was the T88 E1, which used a slightly lighter 105, but none of them went anywhere. So the monument to what if we tried it is now sitting here in Fort Lee, Virginia. The more you know.